what they mean for South Africa, we're now joined by Christie Viljoen, who's a senior economist at PwC South Africa. Christie, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity.
Unpack this report. I'm fascinated by your findings. What are the core megatrends, geopolitical, climate, tech, that your report identifies as rewriting the global economic order? And why should South Africa be paying attention?
Well, I think our key message is everybody's very much aware of what's happening with tariffs around the world, especially in the US. So that's the big story for the year. But that's just one of the big trends that's shaping our world. And the tariff situation is very much a product of how geopolitics is changing. But the other big things driving change in our society, and by that I mean globally amongst people, business, the economies, etc. Climate change, obviously, a very important one as well. I think we see and feel that every day. It's very often in the news. Another one is tech disruption. We see so much talk about the role of artificial intelligence going forward, what it could mean for the labor market. So those are the big three ones. The other twos we looked at, one is demographic shifts. So that's how population changes happen. We have a very young population in South Africa, for example. In many of the Asian countries, we've got on average older populations, and these bring different challenges. And then all four of those actually have an impact on social stability, or we could even say social instability. It makes for a high cost of living, a challenge to sustainable livelihoods, etc., etc. So I think in South Africa, we all have an idea in our heads of what social stability and social instability looks like. So for us, those are the big five elements that's really driving change in the world today, beyond what we maybe just see in the headlines as tariffs and probably conflict in some areas in the world.
So, your report models a scenario in which shifts in partner countries' policies could yield 188 billion rand extra export revenues by 2030. Could you take us through how you came to that figure and perhaps which sectors or even countries that are driving it? I wonder if the United States is on that list.
So what we tried to do with this is to say the world is full of disruption and uncertainty. But as we know from history, from business and from country histories, it's often in these times where opportunities unfold. So we were thinking, let's take some examples. Let's think of the tech revolution that's happening. And we think that very often we think that Asia is where much of the technological development is happening. That means that they need certain resources. And when we think from a South African perspective, we export platinum group metals to Asian countries. This is used in automotive technology, computers, high tech designs. So while we see this tech disruption, we also actually have this opportunity as South Africa to supply some of these resources to the countries where this tech development is actually happening. If we think from a climate change perspective, we might be growing products that in another country, their production is under pressure from climate change. So there's an opportunity for us to export to those countries. So our point was to say, listen, lots of disruption and uncertainty, but we need to keep our eyes open for where we can get these benefits. And so we did a bit of a thought exercise, played with some numbers, looked at the next 5 years at our biggest trading partners to say where might they be making policy changes like these tariffs, for example, and how does this open the door for South African business? And we went through the process of looking at South Africa's top 10 trading partners, what these policy decisions could mean for export values, and then over the next 5 years, working on type of a number of how many billions of rands of opportunity there is. So I guess the key message is with this sort of simulation is to say, let's keep our eyes open. And as South African businesses, we already do business with the world. It's now an opportunity to even upgrade that and do more business with the rest of the world.
You mentioned platinum. I'm just wondering from your report, which current export markets do you see as having the strongest upside under these current global shifts, and why?
As I mentioned, it's very much focused on let's say new technology or greener technology. So platinum is used in in the automotive market, for example, in the exhaust systems, to clean what the emissions that vehicles actually put into the atmosphere. And as we know, all over the world, Europe, North America, Asia, there's such a big focus now on reducing emissions. There are even countries that have put in limits on the production of, let's call it, traditional internal combustion engines. So there are countries that saying 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we don't want any of these on the road. We actually just want electric vehicles. Electric vehicles also have a strong use of platinum inputs. So whether you produce them in China or Europe or North America, there's demand for these platinum group metals, which in the case of South Africa, we are one of the top producers in the world. We have one of the largest reserves in the world. So it gives us the opportunity as a country to be part of this, let's call it this green revolution of lower emission vehicles and electric vehicles that is significantly increasing in sales every day. It is really for us as a country actually a golden opportunity to be able to export more platinum. And from a socioeconomic perspective, it means jobs. It means external revenue from which we gain more taxes, which government then can use to build schools and roads and bridges. So it's a strong win-win situation, both for individual companies, but also for the country and its population.
So I suppose the converse is also true. Where do you see the biggest risk or downside if South Africa fails to adapt to these global policy changes?
Well, many of these policies drive internal activities in other countries, but it also influences the goods that we can ship to them, that we can export to them. So we know in Europe, for example, we've got the CBAM regulations, to use the abbreviation, where they look at the sort of the carbon footprint of the product that you send to them. In other words, they're going to figure out, for example, in South Africa's case, we're still very much dependent on coal for electricity. So that means whatever we produce has quite a heavy carbon footprint because our electricity is carbon heavy. And that means that companies need to adapt to the way they consume and produce energy when they produce goods that are being shipped to Europe, because it makes us less competitive from that perspective. There's also tariffs and taxes involved. So it requires South African companies producing products to rethink where they source their energy from, whether it might be solar power or wind power. It requires us to think big and think differently. We are now competing with other countries for Europe's attention when it comes to products on this sort of a green agenda. And it's again the story of climate change. Countries in Europe are looking at very strictly at how they reduce climate change, and our exporters need to fall in line with that.
Christie, we're going to have to leave it there, but fascinating opportunities. And I guess the trick is to make sure that we ride the wave and notice these trends. But thank you so much indeed. I look forward to reading this bedtime reading over the weekend, the whole report. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Right, that's Christie Viljoen, who's a senior economist at PwC South Africa.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Soweto faces a showdown this Saturday, the 27th of September. Kaizer Chiefs face Kabuskop in the CAF Confederations Cup at the iconic FNB Stadium. Who will dominate the pitch? Tune in live at 3 o'clock Central African time on SABC 2. The game is on and it's everywhere.
7 o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you. This is the second hour of Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa Radio, where we bring you the African perspective. And we're broadcasting live from Johannesburg in South Africa on the internet. www.channelafrica.co.za is where you can find us, and you probably can catch us as well on our social media platforms where we're streaming live, so you can actually watch radio nowadays. I'm Peter Ndoro. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Asanda Peta. Thank you for staying with us. And in this hour, we look at the systemic racism in the criminal justice systems, and this remaining a global concern with Africans and people of African descent disproportionately represented in prisons and detention facilities across multiple countries. We'll also be looking at Ethiopia, where the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have sounded the alarm over the country's rising debt burden. Those stories and more coming up. Let's start off with our news, though. Here is Onele Nzinzi, and following her is Musibudi Makura with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Sanda. Ugandan opposition leader, pop star turned politician Bobby Wine has been cleared to stand for presidency. His